So, hi, I am KB with Nerdophiles. How are you both?
Great.
Great,
How
thank
are
you.
you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Listen, I absolutely adore this show. It is so cute. So, my question for both of you, and I will start with you, Jeff, to answer first. Kind of how did this intriguing story come about? And for each of you, what were some of the creative challenges of bringing it to life? So, Jeff, take it away.
I will I'm gonna send the first part to Coop just because he's got a visual prop that goes along with that answer much better than what I could do. And then I will swoop back for the second part.
No
Yeah,
problem.
it's kind of a weird origin story, to be perfectly blunt with you. So, so Jeff and I were not always a writing team. We actually met because our kids went to school together. So we would like drop them off at elementary school, and then we'd walk home like the same direction. And literally over the course of years, we would just have conversations about writer's life and blah blah blah, and stand on the street corner and shoot the breeze. And Jeff is mostly from the horror world, and I'm mostly from like the family and animation world. And somewhere along the years, we were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do something like a horror family animation, like something that our kids would love, but that we would love, that we would have loved as kids. And we were always like hashing out ideas. And one day we were talking about my family claims to have a family curse on us because my dad's generation, all the men of my dad's generation died relatively young, whether they were married or like born into the family. And one day my cousin was looking through my grandfather's photo album and found this photo.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so that is my grandfather holding the human skull. That's the entirety of the context for it. And my cousin's like, well, I think we found the origins of the family curse. And so Jeff and I just started talking about it, going, okay, what if your family was cursed because of something your ancestor did or maybe took or something like that? And so like honestly, the idea kind of sprung from there. And
And
yeah.
and as far as the challenges, like as far as the challenges go, honestly, it was less an actual challenge and more of something that was actually fun to take on, which was finding the balance of how much horror versus how little horror. Like we always talk about how this is a combination of Coop and I in such a specific way. He talks about how mostly do horror and he does family animation and comedy. And anytime we started to go any too much one direction, the other would pull the other back. So anytime Cooper would be like, "Hey, here's this joke," and it was a little too zany, I'd be like, "Too zany," and I'd be like, "Oh, but let's put the family in a Iron Maiden." Okay, too dark. So it's like we literally would pull each other back and end up in a nice sweet spot in the middle. And so it was a challenge, but it was also kind of fun to find the balance. And so whereas I obviously on a personal level want to push as many scares as possible, but you know that you can't if you're trying to reach all ages. So what we did to take on that challenge was, even though we were able to put in some scares, we compensated for the ones we couldn't put in with creating an atmosphere. And so our show we're really proud of is that we were able to create a scary atmosphere. Even when something scary isn't necessarily happening, it has an atmosphere that just feels kind of unnerving. And so we always joke that we were never making a show for kids. We were making a show for everyone that's accessible to kids. So that was kind of how we encaptured everything.
Oh, I like that you said that because it really does feel like the perfect balance of horror, heart, and comedy. I like to say, like, there are those three elements, like, through and through in every single episode. So, my next question for both of you, and whoever wants to kick it off, but maybe I'll kick it to you, Jim, since Jeff just shared that with us. But what's your favorite artifact adventure? Because I really, really enjoyed the Japanese painting. That's actually
Oh,
one of my favorite episodes. So for each of you, kind of which is your favorite artifact adventure, and how did you work kind of alongside and in tandem with Leo to make sure that like everything that you were bringing to life on the page really translated well, like with his direction?
oh yeah. Well, it's funny. I freaking love the Japanese painting one for like reasons that are like, that's a great example of one that we talked about, not just looking at the culture, like of Japanese culture. What is Japanese horror like? Horror films. How can we bring that to that so that it's not just one thing like, oh, it's Japanese, or this is blah blah blah, but how does all aspects of the culture and the culture of fear, go into that? On a personal level, I always have to say this: episode 4, the Olmec babies, is my favorite artifact because my children are triplets, and
Oh,
that was me trying to explain to people what it was like when they were infants, and like the effect of one crying, then the next one, then the three. And like I always use the line, well, it can't get any worse when all three of them were crying. Well, in that episode, we were allowed to make it worse. So I can't, that one has a personal stake to me.
oh my gosh, I can't believe you. How old are they now? I can't believe you have triplets.
Okay, they're in college. So
Oh,
this also tends so Jeff and I met when our kids were in kindergarten. And we just talking, building sets for daughters in like community theater, seeing the high school plays. We sold this when they were in high school and they're now in college. So it spanned generations or a generation.
and how about for you, Jeff?
The one that I always keep leaning to is funny because it's probably the least specific horror of the whole season, but I have an affinity for the puzzle box episode, for a couple different reasons. Number one, just in my horror, thing, I love the fact that it actually is supposed to be emblematic of the lament configuration puzzle box from Hellraiser. So I'm like, it's our own little Hellraiser box. So that on a horror level, I like. But the idea of being able to store memories and then revisit memories, and at the same point actually create or revealing a little bit more of the backstory of the situation, I always find that personally fulfilling. So the idea of storing memories and interacting with them, but also the actual, origins and backstories of things have always fascinated me.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of like deep and rich history in the show that I thought was quite intriguing. And, like I mean, I know that you guys said, it's a show for everyone, but obviously, like children will love it. But I hope that they learned something too, because it was quite fascinating to get kind of the historical points of the show as well. And so I have to ask, it would be if I didn't ask, do you guys already have a plan for a second season? How was it kind of drilling down these specific 10 episodes and navigating, what the artifact adventure of the week would be, so to speak? I'm going to put it in those terms, but navigating kind of what the specific artifact for that would be while still keeping something, extra and in the pocket for an additional season.
Oddly, our biggest problem is we have too many ideas. I mean, literally, when the show was greenlit and it was time to put together the writer's room, we realized we just kind of kept a list of potential ideas. And the number I have in my head is 135, but I think it was more.
I think it's more.
But I mean, that's just the number. And by the way, that was literally just Jeff and I. That was even before the other writers in the writer's room were coming up with them. So the problem was actually figuring out how to do 10, so, and some of it came to be balancing the world, where it was like, okay, we've already kind of done something in this region, let's kind of go over here, so that we're balancing things. So we have so many potentially more ideas, to the point where we're trying hard not to have them, but it's difficult.
But yeah, we have a lot of ideas, not just for future potential seasons, but we also have a lot of backstories that we know that we would love to be able to tell.
Well, listen, I hope that you guys get the opportunity to tell it because I think the show is so fascinating. So many different like wonderful elements. And I really do hope, you know, kids and parents and all generations kind of in between love it and enjoy it as much as I did. So thank you both for taking time to chat with Nerdophiles. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you.